And welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a quick look at the F-16 ADF, and it's going to be the first one. It's going to be the one that's mostly used for air-to-air, and it's now actually the same one as the Chinese one that we have right here, because in the dev server this one had a slightly bigger elevator, as well as AIM-7F Sparrows, at least, which are relevant for RRB. They're now AIM-7Ms, but they are actually carbon copies of the AIM-7S that we have right now. They might get changed in the future, but as of right now they are the exact same missile. So yesterday we were talking about the MiG-29, and the 29 was like, well, we have all the flight performance in the world, but we really don't have any great missiles here. The R-27s, they are good, but they are very easily defeatable, unless of course you use the radar variant, but then you only have 2 of them. You're then backed up by some R-60Ms, and the R-60Ms are just extremely easy to flare. This is a little bit of the opposite story. The missiles here are great. You have 2 AIM-7Fs, it's still only 2, but they're a lot more reliable, together with the EJK radar, or actually vice versa. It's not that big of a deal. The radar does feel a little bit worse than it once was on the EJK, but it's still a pretty damn good radar nonetheless, opposed to the MiG-29s. The AIM-9Ls are a great backup, opposed to the R-60Ms, and then you have the Vulcan. I think that's a little bit hit or miss. I think the GSH-30 is better in my opinion, at least when it comes to actually downing people whenever you hit them. And then the flight performance of this thing. Now, the acceleration is good, the retention is good, the top speed, it's not quite there, and this thing pulls like an absolute brick shithouse that's thrown into the wind. Sure, if you get it to lower speeds, you can actually get away with dogfighting people. Once you get below that 900 to 800 and start dropping a little bit more, once you reach that 500-600 mark, you're going to be outperforming a lot of enemies in these fights. The issue is in RRB, if you try to do this, you're just going to get third-partied and you die. So very often you're just going to be running away from people for the majority of the match, and you can't really defensive fly against multiple opponents. Of course, top tier 1v2, 1v3, 1v4, it's not really going to be likely anyway, but this thing especially struggles against it. Other than the fact that this thing is actually workable and pretty damn good at lower speeds, it kind of flies like an F-104 ASA. I hate to say it. It feels like an ASA with 2 extra Sparrows and slightly less acceleration and less top speed, especially near the high end. But you know, it is what it is. And before we get started today, thank you to all my YouTube members and all my Patreons and everyone looking to buy this absolute abomination of a decal that you want to plaster all over your vehicles. You can do it by using my discount code in the description below, and you'll get it with any purchase that you will make. But without out of the way, let's go right into the gameplay. And this one is actually a little bit ironic, because very often I will complain about vehicles just not retaining the speed. This thing, however, is a little bit too good at it, and together with the fact that it doesn't pull that much at higher speeds, you're kind of in this boat where you just have too much speed to work with. So I do think you need to use your air brake, and you do need to throttle down very often. Because if you try to play this thing with maximum engine power the entire time, well, first of all, you're gonna bleed all your fuel. You're just gonna burn through it very quickly, and you're just gonna be left out to dry. And secondly, you're just too quick. You're too quick for your own good in this thing, but it really just kind of plays like an F-104. That can actually fight quite well at lower speeds, but again, lower speeds at top tier are largely useless. The AIM-9Ls are quite nice. Very often they will ignore some flares, but in these kind of side aspects, and they drop some flares and they actually don't put a little breadcrumb trail back to their engine, they're just going to lose luck. And they're not like the R-73s, like some Russian mains like to convince you they are. Yes, they are more flare resistant than something like an R-60M. No, they're nowhere near as good as the R-73s were in the second dev iteration. But right now we are fighting multiple people at once, and you can tell that I have a very easy time holding my speed here. It's not like the F-5E, where you just hold your speed forever and you actually turn quite well. This thing just doesn't turn, and that's why it doesn't really lose much speed. Now I'm trying to kill these guys before the MiG-29 that's behind me starts coming in. The issue is there's 4 of them and I don't have any Sparrows left, so I can't really force these head-ons. So I'm trying to space them in a way that I can maybe get a gun kill in, I can maybe sneak a kill in, but this game in general has been lost. I'm not waiting to win this, I'm just trying to see how much I can salvage out of the situation. Now it's a little bit later in the game, and what we should have is a little bit more fuel, because we do carry full tank, as well as the fuel tank, the strapped on fuel tank. And I'm kind of hoping that some of them will run out. The MiG-29 on the right here especially, he shouldn't have too much left. He has been up this entire time, And, well, he's not radar locking me and he's only shooting IR missiles at us. So we have a pretty easy time just defeating his missiles. So I'm kind of trying to run these guys out and then see if I can maybe RTB, maybe can salvage it. I kind of want to make sure that 1 or 2 of them RTB. If there's only 1 or 2, I can probably fight them. I'm gonna have a pretty tough time because this thing just doesn't turn well enough. And it's really biting me in the ass here because it's not allowing me to get the quick kills in that you need for top tier. But the MiG-29 broke off after launching all those missiles. And now we have to deal with a MiG-23 that is directly behind us. And the issue here really is the MiG-23 is quicker than us. He will catch us and he will outturn us quite handily until we go super sustained. But getting in that position is almost impossible. The other MiG-23 behind us actually rips his wing off. And I'm able to cut in behind this guy because I slow down a hefty amount more than him. And then he goes down. Very predictable flight path. And we gun him out of the air. We then almost get missiled by the guy without a wing. But he misses. We flare it. And then we go on to fight the last guy, which is now the MiG-29. And I wanted to 1v1 this guy. I didn't want to sparrow him. But I've been looking around for a while now. I'm again doing the all on Adderall. That turns its head 7,000 degrees. And that's how you have to do it. Because you can't always put your radar on people. But the MiG-29 is directly above us. And he has a very hefty energy advantage. And I actually want to use that against him. Because right now he's going much quicker. He's not locking us. Or not locking us with his radar. So we are able to actually fight this guy. I want to try and go as slow as possible and then try to build an energy advantage while we are behind him. Sounds very counterintuitive, but with this thing you can actually somewhat do it. He then flies in front of us, we get the shot in, he gets set on fire. This guy is a basically done deal. All we have to do now is clean him up and we win the game. We might be a little bit down on tickets. Hey, what's that? Ah, right. Tickets just dropped for no reason. And guess what? Even though the last guy is basically dead, we are going to be losing. We don't even get the kill for it. Thank you, Gaijin. Very much appreciated. On to the next game. I want to show you a little bit more of the quote-unquote average gameplay and the gameplay that you can expect from this thing. Because in general, really, and I'm gonna be a broken record here, it really just plays like an F-104 for the most part. And I know I said it yesterday and someone commented it as well. You basically are just describing average top tier. You can overlay this over any video and it would be relevant. And yes, you are correct. The issue is, that's what top tier is. It's 95% not about how good you're playing. It's not about what your plane can do and can do. It's largely just, how do I position myself? Who do I engage? And what is my loadout like? Like exactly what I said yesterday. The MiG-29, it has amazing performance. And you have to work around the fact that you can basically outturn, out-energy, outrun, out-accelerate most of your enemies. But at the end of the day, if you cannot actually down them, it doesn't really matter how good your performance is. And I said this with the J7E as well, and the J7E is even more limited. It's a very good dogfighter, it's a very capable plane in these smaller fights. And just like the MiG-29, well, the J7E was actually really good when it came out, and it still was until the last patch. Radar missiles are becoming more and more prevalent. And so are the missiles that kind of ignore countermeasures. I'm not saying that they're like R73s, but it's something like an AIM-9L is just a lot more potent because everyone has flares these days. And it's very important that you can actually kill the guy you're shooting at. And there you saw something that this plane is pretty good at. I'm using my ACM mode. I turn it on. It's a pretty big box and I was pulling to get a lock on the other guy, but it slightly brushes the J8. It instantly picks up a lock. And I just decided to go with it. I didn't really care because by the time I disengage the lock, reacquire it, I'm already too late. So I just decided to shoot it off. The guy notched it. The guy flew away from it. He basically drained it of all of its energy. So it doesn't really matter even if he didn't notch it. But that's something that's kind of annoying about this plane. The radar is very good, don't get me wrong. But I just wish that the ACM box was a slight bit less sensitive. Let's put it that way. Because if you even remotely look at something else, it's just going to pick it up. It doesn't matter if it's a friendly, an enemy, a bot, or whatever, even missiles. It picks up basically everything. And it's actually really frustrating. But you know, what can you do about it? And then F-16 comes from the heavens. We need to do one thing here. We need to get some range between the middle of the game right now. We need to try to make some people break off. Because even though all the planes on my 6 that are chasing me are basically shit bricks, altogether, they're gonna have a very easy time dogfighting this thing. Now, I'm gonna be trying to bleed them out of their speed. Missile coming in, I flare, I roll out of the way. I see the missile coming back in, so I roll out of the way. And I think I turned back into it or something. I don't know what happened, but it hits us regardless. It gets hit on the nose and it kills my radar, which is kind of annoying because I still have an AIM 7F. Luckily, we now have the jettison key, which I will find in a few moments. F-16 gets reversed. He's going to be prime target here, but he's definitely the biggest threat. ML coming in. He's a slightly bigger threat because, well, he can actually turn with us quite handily. So can the F-16, of course, but the F-16 is going to be equal, so it's not as much of an issue. Go ahead on with an EJ. We get a hit in. He is not looking too hot. And keep looking around. I need to make sure that I keep my speed, but I need to make sure also that I don't go too fast, because if I go too fast, they will catch me regardless. Most of these vehicles that are on my 6, and secondly, I won't be able to pull enough to actually fight anyone. I'm also, in the meantime, trying to clear my enemies or my friendly 6, and I'm trying to make sure that we can actually snowball this game. Shoot a missile from the side, he flares it, he actually sees it. I was expecting him to go for the guy that was in front of him and not pay attention to me. Unfortunately, he was actually doing that. But this is the strength of this vehicle. You just hold so much speed, you just accelerate so well, that you can get out of a lot of tough situations quite handily. Now the main trap to not fall into is to go too fast, because yes, you will be able to drain them of speed. The issue is if you don't turn well enough, they are simply going to get so much position that your energy advantage basically amounts to nothing. F4J coming in, and he does kind of outpull us. He does get the shot in, he doesn't actually get the shot itself. Go ahead on with the F-16, he missed the rounds. New sonic boom sounds pretty good, by the way. And then the F4J shoots another missile at us. We flare once, we flare twice, and now we're out of flares. And we need to be kind of careful here. I just hope that the F-16 doesn't have any AIM-9Ls left, and I hope that the F4J maybe has to RTB. We go back towards the Mirage, who's now pretty damn slow. There you go. Easy money. We then turn around, and I need to make sure that this guy does not actually have an AIM-9L left. And that's why I'm turning around right now. I'm trying to stay somewhat behind the F5 in the hope that the F-16 goes for the other dude. He doesn't. And if he had a missile there, I probably would have been dead. But I have to take the risk. I need to put some pressure on right now because I need to try and win this game. So we lock onto this guy. I'm going to be RTB, so I might as well shoot it off. And I mean, the F-16 is a pretty hot target, especially with an afterburner. And then I give him a second stage afterburner, which burns twice as hot. Down he goes, and then the other guy gets strafed on the runway. And here we have a little bit of a more ideal situation. The one after here is going to be more of an average, somewhat ideal. This is going to be what your ideal match will look like. Everyone will kind of ignore you. You will be able to third party. People will not be able to notch your missiles properly. Other than that guy. But he didn't really notch it. He just kind of blew up. Same result. But even though I'm locking someone else, I tried to make the missile lock another target. Missile was just really on the mission there, and he just kept going for the same guy. I now need to look around. I need to turn this ACM off because I need to start locking with the IR missiles and just start launching them off. Try to kill as many people, that's too close. Switching over to the guy in the back, waiting for the lock, shoot the second missile, and there comes kill number 2. Thank you very much for playing the game. We then continue on our merry way, and we just kind of extend out. Who do we engage here? We have a MiG-23 on the left, but he's already using countermeasures. He's already turning out. Whereas the FG1 here, or the FGR, is actually turning somewhat into us. And I want to fly towards him and then also go for the Mirage. Guiding it in, well, let's zoom in, try to get the shot in, but I just don't have the angle here. I might have been able to if I pulled a little bit harder, maybe air broke a little bit, but I then would have slammed into the ground. Not a fan of that, so we're just going to pull off the shot and turn around. And look at that, we're still going Mach 1, because that's what this plane is good at. We now have 3 kills, we're going to be turning around, and the game is already essentially over. Super annoying here, because I like these games to be a little bit longer so I can actually have some fights. But again, all these games are just massive snowballs. MiG-21 coming in, he crits someone in the head on. I'm just waiting until the last second, and then boom, he eats a missile right up into the cockpit. Then there's a Mirage, it's a Mirage F1, and if you are one of the poor souls that actually bought it, let me show you what it looks like from the other side, because you should be used to seeing the F1C on the right side of the kill feed pretty damn often. And that's a quick ace, no skill required, but hey, I'll take it nonetheless. And in this kind of setting, this vehicle is pretty damn good. If people ignore you, if you are able to get your quick kills in, because that's what this thing is about. You want to go in, get some kills, and simply leave. You don't want to go sustained. Well, you do if it's a 1v1, but let's be honest, how often does that really happen in this game nowadays? Let me tell you, it's not very often. And here we are with a little bit of the same scenario. However, this time people will actually catch us off guard. What we just did was what we are going to be doing now, except the enemies are going to react a little bit differently. So we have to adapt, we have to make sure that we use our plane correctly. I'm trying to cut the afterburner here, but then I notice some people directly below us. There's also a guy behind him, but I'm trying to pull lead here. I'm trying to get behind these F4E, because I already committed. I can't really break off anymore. I need to go into this direction anyway, because the F4E is flying towards our side of the team, and I just don't have to pull. I'm pulling fully. I'm using my elevator key. I'm just stamping on that elevator, and it's simply not enough. 2 MiG-23s then come for me. I start turning. I'm maintaining around Mach 0.9, and I just need to get out of here. I need these guys to start breaking off. They will waste too much of my time and energy if I have these guys riding my ass. And if they do that kind of thing and there's no teammates to help you, you're gonna have a little bit of an issue, because they simply just cancel you out of the game in the same way that it would happen in something like an F-104 for the 20th time this video. So we turn around the second they actually start breaking off, and I'm starting to look at who I can engage. I don't want to use too much of my radar, but at the same time it does help a little bit with slaving the missiles. I want to go for the guy on the right because he's isolated, but there's a guy coming in from the left, so I want to make sure that he dies before that. We lock him up and we keep turning for 2 reasons. I need to pull into these enemies because I don't want them on my 6. And secondly, that MiG-23 is dogfighting an EJ, and the EJ is just not going to be winning that fight. So I want to make sure that I can clean him up. EJ does the right thing, he pulls in towards us, and he's now just too slow to really do anything, and he gets sparrowed right in the cockpit. And for the last game of today, we have a little bit of a snowy map. What do we do? Well, really, it's the same as every game at top tier. And the issue is that you can't really do it consistently, because it simply depends too much on the matchup, as well as your team, as well as your enemies. Just everything in general. This game is way too dynamic, and it really just has too many variables to play consistently, or at least very consistent. Of course, if you're good, if you know what you're doing, you're gonna be more consistent than someone that doesn't. But very often, more at this tier than any other tier, you're gonna run into situations that you simply can't do anything about. Sometimes it feels like a dice roll. It's just, this game can be super frustrating, and you need to push yourself through that if you actually want to continue to play it. But that's why I'm not a big fan of top tier. Because plane performance starts to matter less and less, and it's less and less about understanding the vehicles and understanding air combat, and more about understanding ballistics, missiles, and just target acquisition, which is a completely different game. People like that, you're free to do so. I'm just not a big fan of it. But you can tell I actually have room to talk about different things. Normally when I play, especially in these target-rich environments, I kind of have trouble to actually, well, stay on track. It's kind of difficult to keep narrating what's going on in the background, because there's so much going on. I'm trying to explain so much, and then there is this. I just have so much downtime because there's a lot of just empty. I turn around now because there is an enemy over there. I turn around now because that fight looks more winnable, and there's not really much to talk about, unless of course it becomes smaller, the small fights, the 1v1s, the 2v2s and stuff like that. But unfortunately, in top tier it's either a 1v10 or it's a 10v1. Thank you all for watching, and you'll see me all tomorrow or the day after with a video that will really just, yeah, same feeling as this one. It's gonna be the tornado.